The very fact of the existence of our world is evil. This means that according to the beliefs of the black hats, fighting evil is fighting the world. Friends, we have to realize who we are. We are not human. We are not human, we are Jews. What are Jews? It's all four letters of the name of God, and the letter D in the middle is the whole world. The letter D stands for the four world sides. The whole world is ours. Those are Jews. A nuclear explosion, that is the most terrifying and effective, from the writer's point of view, countermeasure to the upcoming election. And this explosion will take place in Kharkov, in other words, in several tens of kilometers from Belgrade. Slavs, wake up! It's no longer time to sit at home and be silent. The worst enemies of humanity, the Hessies, Chabad Lubavitch, Jewish sect, and the entire Jewish United States of America are preparing a nuclear attack on Ukraine, which is the sovereign territory of the Soviet Union. It is a blow of Judaism against Slavs. The last cry of this terrorist may become the end of all mankind. There is nowhere else to go. We've reached the very end. Stop lying to yourself. Open your eyes and see the real enemy. Unfollow these actors. Let's show that we are worthy of the legacy of our ancestors. Listen carefully until the end. The torching sun of the Ark of the Covenant will soon rise over the land of the fascist Eastern Slavs. At the end of his book, the prophet Malachi said that the day is coming, burning like furnace, when the Goyim, and if you do not appear in Israel, will be reduced to ashes. By the nuclear sun of faithfulness that has risen for us, and will be like fattened cows. Gisher, you don't have enough time. Whoever didn't make it came late. The Manhattan Project is the code name for the US program to develop nuclear weapons, which formally began on August 13, 1942. The project created 3 atomic bombs. The plutonium gadget that exploded during the first nuclear test. The uranium little boy that was dropped on Hiroshima on August 6, 1945. And the plutonium fat man dropped on Nagasaki on August 9, 1945. For those who are now thinking about the alleged fantasies of hoarders, I'll tell them that Ukraine already has everything necessary for the realization of Kharkov Manhattan Project. And we are talking not about dirty nuclear bomb at all. Well, my dear brothers and sisters, I want to tell you that there is nowhere else to go. You've come to the very end. Today, this monstrous information, which came on the basis of facts about betrayal of the Soviet Union, the betrayal of the State Security Committee of the KGB of the USSR, the betrayal of the nation, the betrayal of the people of the world, the betrayal of life and the betrayal of God on earth by the radical Zionists, by the Hasidists and their terrorists against human sect Chabad Lubavitch. I remind you once again that it was the representative of Chabad, the chief rabbi of Russia, Ber Lazar, who was appointed as the operator of the Ark of Covenant. It was the top Chabad managers who turned Orthodox Ukraine into a testing area for the Antichrist. Every year the Jews in the Kremlin wait for the coming of the Messiah. God granted this holiday will bring us all a lot of light, a lot of joy, a lot of happiness, so that we will soon see the greatest miracle that we will expect, the coming of the Messiah. Happy holiday. Jewish conditions when their Messiah appears. A third temple is needed to exist. When will the third temple be? When will the Messiah be? And why it is not the Messiah? We haven't yet made 2,800 slaves who are a Jew. To this date, there is absolutely clear, confirmed information that Jews, Hassids, radical Zionists, Habads, enemies of humanity, who inflated the KGB in the 80s and 90s, during the time of the traitor Gorbachev, the Jew Philip Denisovich Babkov, and his other bandits, terrorists, and accomplices sold on the territory of Ukraine, from where these nuclear warheads and missile carriers were supposed to be exported. They sold 173 nuclear warheads and 9 missile carriers, of which 2 are standing fully loaded on the Dnieper. And now they are planning not just an ordinary terrorism, but nuclear terrorism, to destroy life in general. I'm not talking about ending human life here, but any life on Earth. The first former deputy prime minister of Russia in Yeltsin's government, Mikhail Poltoranin. Yeltsin then ordered Shaposhnikov, Marshal Shaposhnikov, Marshal of the Air Force, to take all these things out on the cargo planes. Shaposhnikov then came to me. We had good relations with him. He told me that 173 warheads have disappeared. I told Yeltsin that, and he answered, "God be with them, we took everything from them." I don't know where these warheads are, whether they appear or do not appear. Nuclear warheads? Nuclear warheads. So you say that Ukraine has 173 nuclear warheads at its disposal? Yes? Well, ours didn't find them. Shaposhnikov and his team, when they were exporting nuclear weapons from Ukraine, they were taking them out all night. That is a very serious matter. However, they knew nothing about them. These warheads also degrade. But you can make anything out of them. Do not forget that such thing exists. Ukraine had and has nuclear weapons. But the most terrible thing is that they found themselves in the hands of obsessed fanatics, ready to do anything to carry out their devil plans. It must be clearly understood that this Jewish United States of America knows all this, controls all this, and is responsible for all this. They have a direct stake in managing it all. This whole process, this whole anti-human terrorism on Earth. What is the person? Only a Jew is human. That is why we are now collecting the genocide and open terrorism that the Jews are now leading. The word is Russian, not Jewish, here in Israel. As that is now being led by the Jewish United States of America. That is now being led by Bnei Bris, the Jewish priesthood, Jewish England, together with the criminal. There is no place for stamp. The Rothschild clan, and which they lead directly from China, from Taiwan, from the island of Taiwan. Followers, actually not even the followers, they are the founders of the Levites, followers of the Levites. What happens after the nuclear crucifixion of Kharkov may not happen according to the detailed scenario, but it may lead to nuclear anarchy, in which not only Moscow and St. Petersburg will burn, as Goldsmith promised in his speech, also Washington, New York, London, Brussels, and other cities. This is the center of terrorism, the center of crime, and the center of bastards on Earth, based on these foundations. Once again, Israel, Washington District of Columbia, London City, Taiwan, and partly the Swiss centers, because they were located there, in the center of Bretton Woods system. The Federation of Jewish Communities of Russia cooperates with the state in various ways. I would say that the full activity of the Russian Federation of Jewish Communities of Russia is not possible without cooperation with the state. More than 190 nations and nationalities live in our country. Cooperation between nationalities, between the main religions, cooperation of all religions, of the Council of Religions of Russia with the state, the fact that the state understands that the roles of Jewish communities and other communities is the basis and guarantee of the normal life of the Jewish community. Do you understand what's happening here? Not the Kremlin rewards Jews, but Jews reward the Kremlin. Is it normal? Let's draw conclusions. It must be understood that the whole game is over. All these games in pseudo-RF, all those games in the pseudo-RF, all those games in the pseudo-states on the territory of the Soviet Union that is not on Ukraine, that is the sovereign territory of the USSR. The territory of the sovereign. In the territory of the sovereign such things are forbidden by the Da Vinci's cosmic cons. So, my dears, you must understand that nuclear terrorism in territories of the Soviet Union is the sovereign territory of the USSR, is the territorial subjects of the law of Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, and in the European territories of the bright nations, that is, Slavs. That is the blow of Judaism against the Slavs, what we talked about. The first is a strike against Muslims, and the second is a strike against the Slavs, although Slavs and Muslims are one whole, it must be understood. The further development of events on the Russia side is not difficult to imagine. In the first phase, panic, crowds of refugees, and all Russian shock. Against this background, all the world's media will start shouting about the monstrous crime of the Kremlin, which didn't even spare its own people. Remembering Solovyov's constant calls to use tactical nuclear weapons, many will believe this, even among Russian citizens. Only such a scenario can open the way to the coveted Russian throne for a young relative of the high-priced Goldschmidt, Gershon Kapelski, Cambridge and Welsh, in which the son of the Supreme Archon, Benjamin, will become the regent and real master of Russia. The interview didn't take long. You now clearly understand that there is a process of genocide. It is going on. The most cruel genocide of the Slavs that you can imagine. It's just all for stinkers. One of them, David B.G. Rothschild, already dead. Morgan, Rockefeller and Baruch, who are now in America, directing this genocide, where some, in quotes, generals of the Russian Federation go to confess. Every month, and sometimes more often, they go there to confess, fly there to coordinate actions, and clearly serve the cabal with the purpose of destroying Slavs and Muslims. If I want to build a new building instead of an old one, I have to demolish the old one before I can build. Did they get completely lost there? To say it in the Kremlin, the occupiers who are building their Jewish state on our bones. No one can be so strong and rich that can move an entire nation from one residence to another. Only a third can do this. Only the idea of establishing a state has a similar force. If it weren't for the State Service Union, Anti-Terror, KGB, USSR, everyone would be silent. Both Jews and the American Kremlin would be silent. The Jewish American White House would be silent. The Jewish American services in the territory of the Soviet Union would be silent. Private commercial companies would be silent. Everyone would be silent. People wouldn't know about anything. They would simply kill and dispose of them. It's enough to be silent, my friends. The question is, who incites hatred if all media are owned by Jews? Frankly, common sense cannot comprehend that such a mighty power as a nation the officers, everybody else, that great mighty great power that can practically do anything, the children of God on earth, and against that little bunch of morons. I'm sorry, I'll say the truth. Shitheads and cretins, those radical Zionists, morons and dogmatists, who keep everyone in torment, in prison, in terrorism and genocide and in destruction. Wake up, look, it's just a bunch of them. They're in the minority, and how many of us on the earth, how long we will suffer this? Are we going to suffer it or what? Let's stand up and do the right thing. Let's stop lying to ourselves. Let's stop lying to those around us. It's time to be responsible for your actions, for your life, for your children, and try to do things that your ancestors will look at you with pride and not spit on you as the traitors to the human race. Most Russian oligarchs are Jews. They have a great influence on everyone, on domestic media and on the economic policy of the Russian Federation. It is the same on the Ukrainian side. The same Jewish community controls everything. 100% of Ukrainian oligarchs are Jews. In Russian political circles, people are more than convinced that Israel, America, and Ukraine have a grand strategic plan that goes far beyond any army confrontation with the Ukrainian army or the situation in the Middle East. They plan to create a second Israel state in the south of Ukraine, and they want to add Crimea to that mini-state. That is the plan of the new Israel. A plan to create a new Khazarian state. There is a demographic threat to Israel's existence if it remains confined to the Middle East. Therefore, they are looking for another center for themselves. The Khazar state was formerly a Jewish state. Now they mention it in the same way they used to mention Palestine. Today we see the same in Russia and Ukraine. So there are suspicions regarding the beginning of this war. It's not 100% accurate, but there are suspicions that the goal of this Russo-Ukrainian war in Ukraine is to create this big global enterprise, which is analogous to the creation of Israel in Palestine. Many people are surprised when our guys who serve in the Ministry of Interior beat women in rallies and detain people very harshly. In Khabarovsk, they beat one woman literally to death. Why is it happening? I want to say one very serious thing. It is about the fact that between Russia and Israel, a contract is signed not only that all Jews from Israel will come here, but also that the Israel police will establish order here. Therefore, according to this contract, many of the policemen that we now accept as ours, my friends, are Israel policemen and soldiers who came here under the contract. They speak Russian because they are our former fellow citizens. Thus, we understand what's happening. The country is being occupied from the inside, very hard and rude, simply unlimited, so openly that there is nowhere else to go. Nowhere. We have to think about it and act right now. Those with common sense, turn it on. Stop playing these destructive line games because they will lead you to your grave. You and your descendants, stand up and defend the motherland, defend the truth. Identify your enemies correctly. Enemies are sitting in armchairs in front of TV screens. It is the Black Rocks who always play according to the scenarios they portray, with Masonic, not Masonic, but with this destructive, filthy Abaddon Lodge, headed by David and Michael Rockefeller. And also, in those lodge are the gates of all other Kabbalists, radical Zionists, and all other terrorists. It's all done on the Rockefeller platform, and BlackRock was their management tool. I repeat, BlackRock has no status. They are stripped of all statuses. They have no one to call. They are simply terrorists and criminals. So take all steps, get organized. I say this especially to the military and responsible anti-terrorist services. organized to stop this terrorism on Earth, it must be stopped immediately. Officers, generals, use your head. The responsibility now lies on each of you. There is a 6-member team of top managers who manage everything that is left in and from Ukraine. Decisions that the Kiev 6 may not even be aware of are made by the Chabad management team. Organizations like Chabad have been able to manipulate, as I said, for centuries, because they lived in foreign countries for centuries and learned to master the subject of manipulation of people, masses, elites, and so on. So they have these codes sewn into them. It's like comparing a good programmer and a beginner programmer. When you give a task to a good programmer, he immediately knows how to solve it, how to optimize it, how to improve it. Because everything is already in his head, his subconscious automatically gives him all the answers. Chabad is the same. I recently listened to a lecture by a well-known rabbi, whom I will not name, but he is very well known. He is one of the main rabbis of Ukraine. He talked about how good it is that the war started, because after the war we'll be very well off, and we'll get 3 times more than before the war. And those oligarchs who are friends with Ukrainian Chabad, of course the Jewish oligarchs, he said, yes, yes, how beautiful it is will be after the war. And one of the oligarchs, one of those oligarchs who still lives in Kiev, is continuing how many millions of dollars we'll earn when Russia loses. And again, I call upon you to resist the satanic global power, of which the Chabad sect is the main and absolute worst bearer. The same Chabad that turned Ukraine into a testing ground for the Antichrist. The Chabad Lubavitch sect is a subject to arrest as the highest possible punishment. No investigations and no trial according to wartime laws. Everyone needs to know this. You, pseudo-officials, you rotten actors, who on the stage playing the roles of presidents and other officials, you all know about it, especially the older generation of traitors, old men. Actually, not even old men, because old man is a good word, but these rotten lunatics, these stinkers, who started all this on Earth. So for those who continue to doubt Satan's plans in Kharkov, Manhattan, it's important to remember that the devil's most ingenious trick is to convince you that he doesn't exist. Trust me, you're exposed, and you will not escape the fair retribution of light and great divine providence. They will squeeze everything out of you, to the last. All that you think you are, you'll be answering to the nation, to God, and to the highest. That is the truth, and you can't run away from her.
Долой поджигателей войны!